mansion stood at the end of a forgotten road, shrouded in mist, as though the earth itself was trying to erase its existence. The car's engine sputtered and died just as Jane and her friends pulled up to the wrought iron gates. The mansion loomed beyond, its shadow a grotesque silhouette against the setting sun. No map led here, yet the group had arrived, lured by a cryptic invitation. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and an uncanny chill. The faint scent of decay hung in the air, as if the walls themselves were rotting. A massive portrait of a man with hollow eyes watched over the entryway. Exploring the mansion, the group discovered a door at the end of a hallway. It was locked, with claw marks etched into the wood as though something had tried to escape. As night fell, faint whispers echoed through the mansion. The shadows on the walls seemed to move, forming shapes of grasping hands. A hidden door to the basement was discovered behind an old bookshelf. It groaned as it opened, revealing stairs that descended into pitch-black darkness. The ritual circle. In the basement, the group found a strange circle drawn on the floor, filled with cryptic symbols. Candles, long burned out, surrounded the circle. The distant cry. A blood-curdling scream echoed from upstairs. Rushing to the source, they found nothing but an empty room, the window flung open to the storm outside. The diary, in a dusty drawer, they discovered an old diary. The entries spoke of the entity and the curse that binds us here. The last entry read, "Do not stay past the third night." The lurking figure. Through the rain-streaked windows, a figure could be seen standing in the garden, unmoving. Its face was obscured, but its gaze felt piercing. The sealed room they stumbled upon, another locked room, but this one had a strange sigil carved into the door. Something on the other side scraped against the wood. The mirror room. The group entered a room filled with tall, cracked mirrors. Each reflection seemed slightly wrong, with figures moving independently of their real counterparts. The hidden passage. Behind one of the mirrors, they found a small lever. Pulling it revealed a narrow passageway lined with crumbling bricks. A faint sobbing sound echoed from within. The old nursery. The passage led to a forgotten nursery. A rocking horse moved on its own, and a music box played a haunting melody. The attic discovery. The group ascended to the attic, where they found old trunks filled with decayed clothing and photographs. One photo depicted the man from the foyer's portrait, surrounded by shadowy figures. The vanishing companion. One of the group members, Sam, suddenly vanished. The only trace left was his flashlight, still glowing faintly on the ground. The cryptic symbols. Strange symbols began appearing on the walls wherever they went, as if burned into the plaster by an unseen hand. The echoing laughter as they moved through the halls. Unsettling laughter echoed around them, though no one else seemed to be there. The grand ballroom. They entered a grand ballroom. Its once beautiful floor marred with scratches and bloodstains. The chandeliers swayed as if touched by an unseen force. The cursed object. Among the debris, they found a strange amulet. Picking it up, Jane felt a cold shiver, and the air around her seemed to grow heavier. The first warning. A ghostly apparition appeared before them, its face obscured, but its voice clear. Leave before it's too late. The hidden staircase. While exploring further, the group found a trapdoor under a faded rug. Beneath it, a spiral staircase spiraled down into a suffocating darkness. The bloodied altar. At the bottom of the staircase, they found a room dominated by an altar smeared with dried blood. Chains hung from the walls, and the faint sound of chanting echoed around them. The portrait eyes back upstairs. The eyes of the massive portrait in the foyer seemed to follow their every move. A faint tapping sound came from behind it. The moving shadows. As they entered another room, the shadows in the corners began to shift and coalesce, taking on the form of a writhing mass of limbs and faces. The forgotten names carved into the dining table were dozens of names, some crossed out violently. One of the names matched a member of the group. The screaming hallway. As they walked down a narrow hallway, the walls began to scream, their cries of anguish deafening and filled with despair. The phantom feast. The dining room table was suddenly set with a lavish feast, but the food rotted away before their eyes, leaving maggots and decay in its place. The wailing mirror in a forgotten bedroom, a tall mirror, began to wail as they approached, its surface rippling like water. Their reflections screamed silently. The creeping fog. A thick fog began seeping into the mansion from every door and window, carrying with it the faint whispers of 100 voices. The cradle of bones. In a small locked room, they found a cradle made of human bones, gently rocking as though cradling an invisible child. The living walls. The walls of the mansion began to pulse as though alive, faintly beating like a monstrous heart and oozing a thick, black ichor. The endless door-one hallway led to a door that opened into the same hallway, creating an infinite loop. Each loop grew darker and more distorted. The chained apparition, a ghostly figure, appeared, bound in heavy chains. It reached out to them, mouthing silent pleas as its chains dragged it back into darkness. The crimson rain. As the group entered a vast empty courtyard in the mansion, the sky above turned a deep crimson. Suddenly, droplets of blood began to fall, soaking the ground and painting their clothes with dark red stains. The air grew suffocating as the sound of distant screams echoed. The marionette room. They stumbled upon a room filled with life-size marionettes hanging from the ceiling by thin frayed strings. As they moved through the room, the marionettes' heads turned to follow their movements. One by one, the figures began to twitch, their wooden limbs creaking as if they were waking.
The shattered clock. The group entered a room dominated by a massive grandfather clock. Its hands spun wildly, and each chime reverberated with an ear-piercing wail. Suddenly, the clock's glass shattered, and from within, black mist poured out, forming into ghostly clawed hands that reached for the group, the whispering dolls. In another room, shelves were filled with porcelain dolls. Their glass eyes gleamed unnaturally in the flickering light. As the group tried to leave, the dolls began whispering in unison, their voices growing louder and more menacing, as if chanting a curse. The melting portrait. Returning to the foyer, they saw that the portrait of the hollow-eyed man had changed. The face appeared to be melting, flesh dripping off the canvas and pooling onto the floor. The group could swear they saw the eyes blink. The floor of faces. A corridor led to a room with a floor that appeared to ripple unnaturally. As they stepped forward, distorted human faces pressed against the floorboards from below, their mouths silently screaming and eyes full of despair. The shriek of the unknown. A sudden, unearthly shriek echoed through the mansion, shaking the walls. A glowing fissure appeared in the ceiling, revealing an endless void filled with writhing, shadowy entities that seemed to be watching. The crimson pool. They found a bathroom where the bathtub was filled with a thick, crimson liquid. As Jane approached, a pale hand shot out from the depths, grasping her wrist with an icy grip. the Hall of Whispers. In a long, narrow hall lined with cracked mirrors, whispers grew louder with every step. Their reflections seemed to linger behind them, staring with malevolent intent. One by one, the reflections began to step out of the mirrors.
The towering entity. They entered a towering chamber where an impossibly tall figure stood hunched over. Its elongated limbs and eyeless face turned toward them as it let out a guttural growl, its footsteps shaking the ground. The spiraling stairs, the group found another staircase that seemed endless, spiraling into darkness. As they descended, the walls began to close in, covered in pulsating veins that dripped with a foul-smelling liquid. The final warning. An apparition appeared, more solid and terrifying than before. Its face was a blend of all their own, twisted and screaming. It warned hosts, the mansion takes what it wants. Leave or join us forever. The bloodline curse. In a hidden study, they uncovered a book detailing the mansion's curse, tied to the bloodline of its original owner. The text seemed to rearrange itself as they read, forming threats aimed directly at them. The hands in the dark. While trying to escape, the lights went out completely. The group felt cold, skeletal hands grabbing at them from the darkness, though nothing was visible when the lights flickered back on. The growing madness. The group's minds began to fracture as the mansion whispered their darkest fears and regrets. Jane saw her friends as grotesque monsters, and they saw the same in her. The final confrontation, the entity revealed itself in its full, horrifying form, a mass of writhing darkness and shifting faces. It demanded a sacrifice to let the others go. The escaped Jane made the ultimate decision to sacrifice herself, distracting the entity long enough for the others to flee. As they ran, the mansion began to collapse in on itself, consumed by the darkness.